I never thought this would happen to me. I always trusted her, my wife Lena, she was my everything. We'd been together for years and everything about our relationship felt solid. We were that couple who had the routine down, who knew each other's habits and quirks so well. It was almost like we were one person. She'd smile at me across the dinner table and I'd feel like the luckiest guy in the world. But looking back now, I realized there were little signs, things that, at the time, didn't seem too important. At first it was the late nights. She started staying late at work more often. She'd come home later than usual, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. But I tried to brush it off. After all, she was always busy, especially with her promotion coming up. Her boss was demanding, and I knew the hours were getting longer. But there was something about the way she'd always hurry inside, like she didn't want to be seen. I should have asked, should have pressed her about it, but I didn't. I trusted her too much. That's the thing about trust, it blinds you to the things you don't want to see. Her phone became another red flag. She'd keep it face down no matter where she was. In the past, we'd be open with each other about messages or calls, but now it seemed like she was protecting something. There'd be moments when she'd rush to the bathroom with it, or when she'd suddenly be busy with something else if I asked to borrow it for a second. I tried to ignore it, but it ate away at me little by little. I remember one night I asked her if anything was wrong. She brushed me off, said everything was fine, but there was that tone in her voice, the one that didn't match her words. I thought maybe it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to distract myself, telling myself that she was probably just stressed or maybe going through something personal. I told myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The way she'd laugh at something on her phone, then quickly shut it off when I walked into the room, it felt like a secret she didn't want me to know. I even caught her typing a message once, quickly turning the screen away when I glanced over her shoulder. It wasn't like her. Lena never used to act like that. The little changes started adding up and I couldn't ignore them anymore. But even with all of that, I didn't want to believe it. I kept convincing myself I was overthinking, that I was just being the jealous husband. I didn't want to face the truth. I had a good life, and I wasn't ready to throw it all away based on gut feelings and paranoia. So I buried it all, shoved it down, and kept living like everything was fine. And that was my biggest mistake. One night I decided to pick her up from work. I didn't even think twice about it, just a simple thing I'd done a million times before. But when I drove past the usual route to the office, something caught my eye. A car that wasn't hers, parked near the entrance of a motel. It was weird because I knew Lena's routine, and she never stopped there. She'd never had a reason to. And yet I saw her car, her unmistakable car, right there in the parking lot. My heart sank. I pulled over without thinking. I couldn't help myself. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but something deep inside me told me this wasn't just a coincidence. This was something I couldn't ignore any longer. The more I stared at her car, the more my thoughts raced. Was I right all along? Was this it? Was this the moment everything changed? I didn't plan on following her, but curiosity got the better of me. The moment I saw her car parked in that lot, I couldn't just drive away. I told myself I'd only take a quick look, just to see what she was doing, and then I'd drive off, no harm done. But as I sat there in my car, staring at hers, I realized I couldn't leave. I had to know the truth, even if it hurt. It felt like the world around me had suddenly gone silent, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles were white. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I kept watching, trying to find a reason for her car to be parked there, but there was nothing that made sense. This wasn't some casual stop. I knew Lena, and she wasn't the type to just pop into a motel for no reason. I told myself to drive off, to forget about it, but it was like I couldn't pull away. The longer I sat there, the more my mind spiraled. I thought about all the little things that had been off lately. The late nights. The phone always face down. The secrecy. It was all adding up now, and I couldn't pretend anymore. I told myself just for a second I'd take a closer look, and then I could leave it all behind. But as I got out of my car, I realized there was no turning back. I wasn't going to just pretend I didn't see her there. I wasn't going to ignore the gut feeling gnawing at me. I walked toward the motel, the gravel crunching under my feet as I tried to steady my breathing. I kept my distance, staying low, not wanting to be noticed. I didn't know what I was hoping to see. Maybe I just wanted to be wrong. Maybe I thought I'd see something that would make sense of all the strange behavior. But then I saw them. I couldn't make out much from the distance, but I didn't need to. The way they were standing close to each other, the way they were laughing, it was like something clicked inside me. I knew deep down that this wasn't some innocent moment. She was with him. She was with him. I couldn't breathe. I felt like my chest was being squeezed, like I was suffocating. The person with her was a guy I didn't recognize. He didn't look like anyone from her work or our circle of friends. He was younger, and from the way they were interacting, it was clear that they were comfortable with each other, too comfortable. I watched them for a few moments longer, too stunned to move. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all, but there was no making sense of what I was seeing. It wasn't just the sight of her with him that struck me. It was the way she was acting. The way she was looking at him. It wasn't just a casual conversation. No, this was something deeper, something more intimate. My stomach twisted as I watched them walk toward the door of one of the motel rooms. I felt the world tilt beneath me as if the ground itself was shifting. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought I'd be able to walk away and pretend like nothing had happened. Maybe I thought I'd find some rational explanation. But the truth hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just spending time with another man. She was choosing him, choosing to be with someone else in a place like that. A motel. That was the last place I ever thought I'd find her. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I was frozen, stuck in that moment, unable to move, unable to look away. I couldn't process what was happening. I couldn't understand how she could do this to me, how she could betray me like this, right under my nose. My hands were shaking as I got out of my car, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to confront her. I couldn't just sit there and watch her walk into that motel with him. The anger was bubbling up inside me, and the more I tried to control it, the more it surged. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt like I was going to explode. I didn't even think about what would happen next. I just knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I couldn't let him get away with this. As I walked toward them, everything around me seemed to fade away. The parking lot was quiet, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my head, the sound of my own footsteps crunching on the gravel. I was on autopilot, my body moving without me even having to think about it. All I could focus on was the sight of her, my wife, my partner, walking so casually with him. I could feel my fists clenching at my sides, and I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just some mistake or a harmless fling. This was a betrayal, a complete destruction of everything I thought we had. I wasn't sure if I wanted to yell at her or break down right there. The anger was so thick, so overwhelming, it was hard to think clearly. When I reached them, I saw them standing close, too close. She looked up, her face lighting up with a smile when she saw me. That smile, I hated that smile now. It wasn't the same smile she gave me when we shared a quiet moment together. It wasn't the smile I'd seen 100 times before. No, this was different. This was the smile of someone caught, someone who didn't know how to explain themselves. She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't let her. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care about the excuses she was about to give. I didn't care about the words that were probably already forming in her mind. All I wanted was the truth, and in that moment, I knew the truth was something I didn't need her to say. I could see it in her eyes. I could feel it in my gut. Before I even realized what I was doing, I grabbed him. I didn't think. I didn't care. I was so far gone in my rage I just reacted. He tried to step back, tried to pull away, but I was faster. My hands were on him, pushing him down, trying to rip him away from her. It wasn't even about him anymore. It wasn't about who he was or what he had done. It was about the betrayal. It was about her choosing him. And I wasn't going to let him just stand there like it was nothing. Like I wasn't going to feel the way I did. She screamed for me to stop, but her voice didn't reach me. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the image in front of me, the image of her. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with. standing there watching as I lost control. I don't even remember what I said. I don't know if I said anything at all. All I could think about was making him feel what I felt. The hurt. The anger. The complete devastation. It wasn't enough to see him there, standing next to her. I needed him to understand. I needed him to know how deep this went. The anger kept rising, and the more I tried to hold it back, the more it broke through. I wasn't thinking anymore. I wasn't the man who had walked into that parking lot earlier. I was someone else now. Someone full of rage and hurt and disbelief. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to make him feel everything I felt. The way she had shattered my trust. The way she had torn apart everything we had. The way I couldn't go back to the life I had just a few hours ago. It was all slipping away, and I was too angry to stop it. I don't know how I did it, but I reached them, and all I could focus on was making him feel the same way I did, betrayed, hurt, and powerless. I don't even remember the exact words I said, but I was done. I had done with the lies, done with the secrecy. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't thinking about the consequences or the mess I was creating. I just wanted to make him understand the weight of what had just happened. I grabbed him by the collar, pulled him close, and threw him to the ground, not caring about anything else. He scrambled to get up, but I didn't give him a chance. Every time he moved, I pushed him back down harder, wanting to make him feel the helplessness I felt in that moment. The humiliation of realizing that the woman I loved was no longer mine, that she was with someone else, had turned into this raw, uncontrollable rage. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The person standing there in the parking lot, attacking this guy, he wasn't me. He couldn't be. I wasn't a violent person. I never had been. But the way she had looked at him, the way she had chosen him over me, had shattered something inside me. It felt like the ground beneath me had crumbled, and I was just trying to hang on to anything I could. It didn't matter that he was fighting back. It didn't matter that he was begging me to stop. I was so deep in my anger that none of it made sense. I could hear her shouting at me, trying to pull me off him, but I couldn't focus on her anymore. She wasn't the person I wanted to hear from. Not right now. I was consumed by this feeling, this need to make him pay, to make him feel every ounce of betrayal I had felt. I wanted him to know that he had taken something from me that could never be replaced. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't just some fling. No, this was personal. This was about my life, my trust, my everything. And now it was all gone. I pushed him again, this time with more force, not caring about what happened to him. I felt this adrenaline coursing through my veins, clouding my judgment, making me act without thinking. I could see Lena, standing off to the side, her hands over her mouth, watching everything unfold. She looked scared, maybe even guilty. But that didn't matter either. What mattered was the man on the ground in front of me, the man who had been with her, who had taken something from me without even thinking twice. I wanted to make him feel what I was feeling. Every punch, every shove was a reflection of the hurt I couldn't express with words. I wasn't in control anymore. I had lost it. I was so angry, so filled with rage, I couldn't see past what was happening right in front of me. All I could focus on was making him feel the same brokenness, the same emptiness I was drowning in. The sound of him gasping for air, the way he begged me to stop, didn't reach me. I couldn't hear it. All I could hear was the overwhelming sound of my own heartbeat, pounding louder and louder, drowning out everything else. It wasn't until I felt someone pulling me back that I stopped. The fog of anger started to clear, and I realized where I was, what I was doing. My hands were trembling, and I felt dizzy. It was like I had just snapped back into reality. But the damage had already been done. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The guilt, the regret, it hit me almost immediately. But at that moment, all I could think about was how I had been betrayed. How everything had been taken from me in a way that I could never fix. It took a moment for everything to sink in, but when it did, it felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I had gone too far. I had lost control. And now I was standing there, staring at the mess I had made. The guy was on the ground groaning, and Lena was standing a few feet away, her face pale, her hands trembling. It was like I was watching everything from the outside, disconnected from the reality of what I had just done. I had let my rage take over, and now I was stuck with the consequences. I could barely look at her. I wanted to yell at her, to demand answers, but I couldn't find the words. The betrayal was suffocating me. She had done this to me, and now I had crossed a line I couldn't erase. I had hurt someone physically, and the anger that had driven me was slowly turning into shame. I wanted to apologize to fix things, but I knew it was too late for that. What had happened between us was beyond repair now. The trust had been shattered. It wasn't just about what she had done. It was about everything I had ignored, everything I had refused to see, and everything I couldn't get back. I turned away from her, my mind racing. I didn't want to deal with her right now. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the explanations, or the apologies. Nothing could make up for what she had done. Nothing could undo the way she had betrayed me. I felt numb, like I had been hollowed out from the inside. All the memories, the good times we had shared, felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. It was as if the woman I had known, the woman I thought I had married, was someone else entirely. The realization hit me harder than anything I had felt before. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped in this moment, stuck with a truth that I didn't want to face. The guy was still on the ground, struggling to get up, his face bruised and bloodied. I couldn't even look at him anymore. He wasn't the problem. She was. And yet, I had taken it out on him, pushed my anger onto someone who didn't deserve it. The regret hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lost sight of everything. I had let my emotions get the best of me, and now I had to live with what I had done. I turned back to Lena, my eyes locking with hers for a brief moment, but there was nothing in her expression that made me feel like she understood the depth of the hurt she had caused. She didn't even seem sorry. She just stood there, frozen, like she didn't know what to do either. It was too late for explanations, too late for apologies. The truth was out, and it wasn't something we could come back from. I could see it in her eyes, too. The distance was already there. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. We were both standing in the wreckage of what we used to have, and nothing could fix it. I walked away. I didn't care about anything else anymore. I didn't care if she called after me, or if anyone else had something to say. The pain was too much to bear, and I needed to get away from it. I needed to breathe. As I walked to my car, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The life I had built, the trust I had placed in her, it was all gone. I wasn't sure where I would go from here, but I knew that the person I was before this moment didn't exist anymore. And I didn't know if I could ever be that person again.